Hey there everyone, AJ back again for the Mighty Gluestick channel. I make videos about Dungeons & Dragons lore full time so you don't have to. Today we delve into the history of the most recent empire of humanity on the world of Toril, one which rose to such power it changed the face of the world and forever changed the nature of magic. Rising from some fishing villages in the far northern shores of Faerun and ending in the thundering crash of mountain cities falling from the sky, it's time to talk about ancient Netheril and the age of epic magic. Netheril's story is also an epic in scope and the relentless march of time. The timescale is massive, stretching from its founding 5,350 years ago through a series of different ages, commonly regarded as pivotal eras in the history of the Empire. For a comparison, this is far back in Earth's history, ignoring for a moment the time displacement between the two worlds, would place the founding of the Netheril Empire over 3 centuries before the practice of farming even arrived on the Atlantic coast of Europe. It was before the official age of copper in Europe. It was the tail end of the Neolithic age. It was before anyone in the Western world ever heard of this amazing technological breakthrough called a plough. It was a very long time ago, but even so, human civilization on Toril was already old. Empires had already risen and fallen. They, in turn, were built on the bones of older, inhuman empires, with grand legacies and buried secrets of their own. They don't call it the Forgotten Realms for no reason. Our story begins in the paradise of rivers, forests, lakes and plains on the shore of the narrow sea, the main body of water which formed the northern coastline of the region known as Netheril. Human settlements had long clustered along this bountiful stretch of sea, supported by rich fishing. In the year -3859 DR, the villages of Fenwick, Gers, Gilan, Gustaf, Moran, Nuusef, and Janik were consolidated under the charismatic rule of the shaman who would become king, named Nether, whom the Netheril region and empire was eventually named after. Gilan was the military arm of the Seven Town Alliance. Strong in shipbuilding, it ensured that the alliance of 7 towns known as Seventon was built on the back of a strong militia. The strong martial tradition became ingrained in the Netherese people from a very early time. Along with a military hierarchy, order and logic flowed from the wisdom of their shaman king. He invented the calendar of Netheril and maintained the prosperous alliance of these towns. His preference was to reside in the village of Gers, but the fishing port of Nuusef was the highest population and military activity was strongest in Janik on the eastern front and Gustaf on the west, which provided the protection on both sides of those shores. Inland, in the valley formed by the Delimber River, a nation of elves known as the Erlan had resided since -4700 DR, living in homes hollowed out of selected trees and connecting them with networks of elegant rope bridges and platforms in a style and lifestyle that worked in harmony with nature. This is one of the reasons little trace now remains of them there, even though their civilization lasted for 6,000 years and may yet rise again. All that currently remains of the kingdom of Erlan is a crumbling old road and a ruined port. In -3830 DR, the magic of the Erlani elves was taught to the humans of Netheril, whom the elves had been carefully observing for quite some time. This began an obsession with arcane magic amongst the humans, which became the driving force in Netheril society and would eventually spell their doom. A note on the Erlani elves. Obviously, Elven history is very deep, and it's cutting a long story that began in -5000 DR very short to say that the Erlani lived in a realm which had seen the very worst fallen depravity of the surface elves. The supremely arrogant sun elves had fled from disaster in the massive forest realm of Arcorer, which later became known as the Great King Forest, which stretched across Ristelwood, Cormanther, Elvencourt, Semberholm, and Uveiren, and fled to Silvanide to establish a population of sun and gold elves. This group and its infernal taint created a lasting legacy of evil that later plagues the civilization of Erlan. It was the birthplace of the demon half-breeds, the Feyre, who grew to dominate the region. The Erlani elves were far more open-minded and lived in the High Forest, founding their kingdom in -4700 DR. They allied with the dwarves of the north and came into inevitable, merciless conflict with Arcorer's high mages once they discovered when the Arcorer high mages discovered the once great and noble house of Deladrigeth, sun elves had fallen into congress with demons, literal congress with demons, enlisted the Erlani forces and destroyed the great house, killing 4 and imprisoning 3 of them. Elves being quite hung up on the nobility and seeing this as an unprovoked attack on a noble house, even though everybody knew it was evil, the Silúvaniden noble houses quickly retaliated, and 200 years of warfare followed, known as the Seven Citadels War, but some also call it the Sixth Crown War. This war escalated sharply when ancient tombs were unlocked by the Silúvanide unleashed potential Vishantar weapons from a previous era. These were artifacts that devils helped ancient sun elves create back in minus 10,900 DR. So consorting with demons and using infernal artifacts against other elves really set off the massive conflict, and the Erlani elves were fully joined with the mighty Sharvan elves, who fielded entire Elven Dragon Rider legions and immense magical firepower, beat Silúvanide into submission, and with the end of the Seven Citadels War around minus 4,300 DR, Erlan forcibly annexed Silúvanide and made it a vassal realm. The capital of Erlan was still the tree city of Tuviamanthar, later known as Tall Trees, established in minus 4,550 DR, but Silúvanide was the centre of hot activity for them for many centuries. Obviously, they're suppressing ancient evils. Around this time, in minus 4,366 DR, the Imaskari artificers far across the continent in the deep southeast opened a pair of gates to ancient Earth, from which they took thousands of human slaves from ancient Egypt, and another one temporarily shifted from Mesopotamia. Gradually, as children were born with the mix of Imaskari and Earth heritage, the Milan people came into being. Just to give a further perspective of how long ago this was, it would be another 466 years before Imaskar began what is known as its late period, and more than a century after that Lord Artificer Omanond ordered Imaskari artificers to fashion the Imaskar Kana, the 7 artifacts that saw the entirety of Imaskar Empire's knowledge of magic. Obviously, this plays a role in Netheril later on, as you can imagine. So, that gives us some background on the elves who began teaching Severanton humans their ancient elven high magic, and that these elves, from their perspective, had come through a brutal civil war and only survived because of their acceptance of allies, including non-elven allies. In the Severanton humans, they saw potential military allies on their northern coast and decided that teaching them magic would be a prudent investment. This also explains why in minus 3,847 DR, Selûnite clerics established the Abbey of the Moon in Netheril, built atop the tallest of the Dragon's Heart Mountains. The range was renamed the Abbey Mountains in honour of the building. This act certainly interested the Alani elves, who also worship Selûn, and had been observing the humans for a few years already. Formal relations began between the two nations in minus 3,830 DR, with the elves' instructions. The human Theron of the village of Gers became the first Netherese arcanist. Shortly after, in minus 3,827 DR, Nether the Elder was murdered by his own son. Well, it's hotly rumoured that it was his own son. He was killed by a poisoned dagger. His son was named Elandril Nether. Nether the Younger was then democratically elected as leader of Netheril. He was just 21 years old when he took power and died in minus 3,772 DR after 55 years of prosperous rule. Just a side note on the ancient religion of the Netherese, they worshipped a pantheon of 10 deities, which were Selûn, the goddess of moon, stars, beauty, love, navigation, wanderers, divination, and dreams; Shar, twin sister of Selûn, the goddess of the night, darkness, and secrets; Janath, the daughter of Shar and Selûn, goddess of grain, agriculture, and life. Her name changed to Chauntea after the fall of Netheril; Mistral, the other daughter of Selûn and Shar, the goddess of magic, the weave, knowledge, and creativity. She plays a big part in the fall of Netheril later on. Amornator, the god of sun, law, order, and time. After Netheril's fall, he vanished and was reincarnated as Lathander. Jurgil, god of death, murder, and strife. Kozar, deity of storms and destruction. Moanda, the evil god of rot and decay, yet he was known to be an enemy of Jurgil. Targus, god of war, and Tyche, goddess, or Tyche? I call it Tyche, goddess of fortune, luck, chance, and accidents. Okay, so skipping ahead 117 years of peaceful development, suddenly an orc horde rampaged out of the spine of the world mountains, requiring the combined Elven and Illifarn and Erlan to force them back. assisted by the Netherese Empire and the Rengarth barbarians, who have now had their tribal lands absorbed by the Netherese Empire. The Rengarth are human barbarians who had long lived in what is now known as, well, kind of between Netheril and the Anrock area. So they were still retained their own leadership, but the lands were officially sort of annexed by Netheril under protection. By minus 3654 DR, an ancient Saruk Lich became involved in the Netherese civilization. Now, the Saruk are one of the creator races. They're creators of the scaly kind. So they created Yuan-Ti and all sorts. In the disguise of a human art wizard named Arthindol, he taught many secrets of arcane magic to the Netherese, who came to call him Terraseer because of his habit of being able to see what's going on all around the world. And this is where some distinct corrupt traits started to manifest in the Netherese culture. For example, in minus 3649 DR, the innocent rock gnomes dwelling in neighbouring hills around Netheril were enslaved by the Netherese. Shortly after, with newfound labour force, the fishing village of Zenith was established with the aim of becoming a great port city in the future. The construction began in minus 3637 DR, but between 3605 to 3590 DR, a legion of orcs from the spine of the world launched another major invasion of the nation of Netheril, which lasted 19 years before the Netherese and Elven armies turned them back. Netheril's military force strengthened, obviously, and they realised they needed even greater control of the narrow sea. So in minus 3552 DR, the port of Runlatha was founded. This provided plenty of additional resources, and trade with the Rengarth barbarian for many years must have given them a taste for Netherese seafood, because in minus 3554 DR they established their own port named Frostypaw in the narrow sea shore. 11 years later, everything changed. In minus 3533 DR, the Nether Scrolls were discovered by Finder, a Netherese human, within the ruins of ancient Arivandar. The Netherese gave up the arcane magic they learned from Erlan, and they started to take to magic described in the Nether Scrolls, which promises even greater power. This is clearly a very alarming development for the elves' point of view, and they were already mighty uncomfortable with the enslavement of the rock gnomes, who suffered greatly under the control of the humans. The Netherese humans began to practice truly epic magic, and with the departure from their stewardship under the Erlani elves, the Nether Age had begun. A lot of what I'm about to describe may be quite a shock to some D&D players, but I think it will provide some real insight and grounding as to why the people of Faerun are like they are now. It will also illustrate where the magical traditions and a lot of the common lore of magic began on Toril, and also serve to show how just incredible the Empire of Magic was, and how disastrous the fall of Netheril was for the entire world of Toril. So take a short break. Get yourself a beverage and a snack. We're about to get deeply mystical. Netheril's mages very quickly came to define a new social hierarchy. There were those who knew magic and those who served the mages. The wizards who crafted and powered the magic then improved the lives and safeguarded the homes of the nation, commanded both enormous power and great influence. However, they were still humans and subjected to all the personal flaws and petty rivalries that have always plagued human beings. For example, in minus 3500 DR, the city named Tenesh, ruled over by Aryan, was destroyed by Tarchamas, the Unyielding, as a result of a bitter and vicious personal feud between them. This dramatic destruction, due to so much power being in the hands of just two arrogant and ambitious humans, was another sign to the elves that the Netherese were falling prone to the corruption of power. It might not have alarmed the elves if such a large conflict with many wizards and their forces battling it out and the city brought to ruin as a result of a combined and furious effort. Warfare the elves understood, but this was not the case at all. With a newly uncovered ritual and tremendous magical power, Tarchamas created a volcano that just devastated Tenesh in a single act of overwhelming violence, demonstrating the latest Netherese superweapon. 20 years before the fall of Tenesh, though, the Elves of the North, not just the Arlani, had begun to secretly wage a campaign of liberation for the enslaved rock gnomes, helping them to escape and flee to the relative safety of the southern and eastern reaches of Faerun. The Netherese, engrossed in their obsession with this new age of magic and their ever-increasing egos, barely even noticed the steady decline in rock gnome numbers. I mean, they didn't think much of them in the first place, obviously. The Wizards of Netheril expanded their territory only a little bit at this stage, but they did expand on their knowledge and of the arcane artifice quite a lot. The exact details of that wondrous items that were invented during this time are lost to time, but we do know that in minus 3462, Congenio Ione created the first of Congenio's pebbles, the items that later became known as Ion Stones. He was just 33 years old at the time. That same year, Anagoth, a popular Netherese arcanist, fell into the icy waters of the narrow sea at his son's wedding. The entire bay is named Anagoth's Bay in his honour. Why he was so famous as to name an entire bay after him, we don't know, but it gives some insight as to how influential these genius wizards were. This was the beginning of a techno-magical age of discovery, and these original masters were pioneers into whole new branches of arcane science. In minus 3458 DR, the shield dwarves of Delzoun revealed themselves to the Netherese. It would not be until minus 3419 DR that the dwarves would begin to negotiate a trade route between Delzoun and Netheril officially. The negotiations took 3 full years, but after that there was a rapid construction of a low road, which connected the two realms through an amazing passage through the safest sections of the Underdark. Safest Underdark. Further disruptions to the alliances between its neighbours occurred in minus 3447 DR when the Netherese settlement of Conch was established at the base of the Column of the Sky Mountains. This land was considered to be sacred by the Rengarth people, who widely proclaimed that any non-Rengarth structure built on the site was cursed. The Netherese took such claims with a large grain of salt and sent their caravans into the traditional Rengarth lands anyway, which prompted many attacks by barbarians on merchants and on the settlement itself. The Netherese were actually fairly tolerant of this going on, despite the fact that they could have just obliterated or completely subjugated their Rengarth barbarians without much effort. In the Anarok region, long before it became a desert, it was known as Therivel, also known as the Alabaster Towers, thanks to it being the former home of the Moon Elf Archmage Arborat, who was nicknamed the Alabaster. There was some shonky fairy activity going on in the city, and a number of sorcerers were captured and had the secrets of new types of spells violently ripped from their minds by Netherese mages. This occurred in minus 3392 DR and kind of shows that the Netherese, when it came to their pursuit of magical knowledge, would stop at nothing. Further alliance with dwarven kingdoms occurred in minus 3373 DR, when the northern dwarven kingdom of the Grey Peak Mountains and the Underdark beneath the Dalimber Vale, known as Amarinda, opened formal trades with Netheril. This kingdom was never significantly large or very influential, but the realm was incredibly wealthy. The Amarinda dwarves mined a sizable amount of the extremely rare occurring natural veins of adamantine ore from beneath the Grey Peaks. They crafted legendary suits of everbright armour from the near indestructible alloy, and this military power of Netheril was growing stronger all the time, but they were still much more focused on their own internal development than on any external conquest of the continent. It was around minus 3315 DR that the great Archwizard Ialum was born. He was a beloved champion of his people and the inventor of both the Mythalar and the flying enclaves of the Empire. These sliced off and flipped over mountain peaks that whole cities were built on and within. He has an extremely long life. Born in Severnton, Ialum soon arose to prominence when in minus 3145 DR he led a major battle known as the Excursion into Extinction, bringing thousands of Netherese spellcasters and warriors to mount an attack on the largest concentration of orcs in Netheril's land at the time. The Excursion into Extinction was basically a campaign of genocide against the orcs. Ialum was most famous for his invention of the Mythalar in minus 3014 DR. The Mythalar dug deep into the raw, unfiltered magic of the Weave. The Weave is basically the currents of magic that were controlled by Mistral. The Arcanists of Netheril used it to create quasi-magical items that were permanent as long as they were within the 1 mile range of a Mythalar. With the establishment of the Mythalar, Ialum created the first Mythalar-powered item in minus 3011 DR and the first floating city in minus 2954 DR. Between minus 2758 DR and minus 2208 DR, Ialum trained thousands of Arcanists to become archwizards in their own right. He also managed to greatly augment the strength of the Mythalar using precious metals. At the height of the Empire's growth between minus 2207 DR and minus 1206 DR, Iolume frequently journeyed across Netheril to establish new floating enclaves or investigate strange magic. However, in minus 6906 DR, the stability of Netheril became steadily undermined by both the Faerûn and numerous disasters. Well, you can check out what the Faerûn were. I made a video about them specifically. I'll put a link to it down below. This caused Iolume to become increasingly reclusive as he attempted to research ways of countering the threat of the Faerûn, to the extent that he handed the day-to-day running of his enclave, Zinlinau, to a number of other archwizards. Have you counted how many thousands of years this man lived yet? He never actually died of natural causes or magical mishap. He was 2,944 years old by the time he underwent the transformation into a lich and established a lair in the Underdark in the year minus 371 DR. By minus 339 DR, Iolume fully retreated to his North Dark lair and began training an ever-growing number of apprentices, fleeing the decline of the eventual fall of Netheril. It was believed that during this period that Iolume was responsible for the creation of the first Alhune from his illithid students. In 329 DR, Iolume was apparently slain by a cabal of Illithiliches. Iolume's last human apprentice, Tabra, witnessed what she believed to be her master's death with his own students. This was actually a rite concocted by Iolume in an attempt to create an undead elder brain that he would then merge his own sentience upon. As with most of his arcane experiments in his life, it was a success. In revenge for her master's apparent death, Tabra slaughtered the last few of Elenthal's mind flayers by casting Iolume's longevity on herself in the midst of their community. She then destroyed all records of the spell except her own and those of Iolume himself had secretly hidden away, and fled to the surface. That spell, by the way, drains the life force of all nearby beings and transfers it into the ritual caster. The necromantic technique that many wizards and lesser rites and rituals gleaned from rumours of Iolume's longevity ritual used to greatly extend their own lifespan. By 1372 DR, Iolume survived in the form of an undead elder brain known as the Oracle of Elenthal. Only Iolume's undead servitors and the ghosts of the mind flayers slain by Tabra remain with him. The few brave explorers who have stumbled upon the Oracle of Elenthal have gained bits of arcane knowledge dating back to the height of Netheril from their meetings with it. And I'm not sure that is not the end of Iolume's incredible existence. We shall pause in our exploration of ancient Netheril. Thanks for sticking with me up to this point. Next up in the series, the amazing age of magical discovery continues with the inventors, dates, and development of many of the spells that many magic-using player characters include in their spell lists to this day. So stay tuned. If you liked this video or learned something new, please express your appreciation with a thumbs up. If you enjoy this sort of content as well as my detailed monster ecologies, consider subscribing to the channel. Check out my Patreon for some exclusive content and all the full scripts for these videos. Buy some merchandise, wear your geek with pride, check out Patron Blades for a mighty smooth shave, and as always, thanks for listening. I'll be back with the next History of Faerûn video very soon.